I really didn't see this coming. Clip Studio Paint released an iPad app yesterday. I think you're gonna like it. Let's cut to the chase. Should you try this? Yes, there's a 6-month free trial, and there's no reason not to try it. After 6 months, it is gonna be $8.99 a month after that. More on that later. So Clip Studio Paint is one of the more popular comic and manga drawing programs out there on the desktop. You may know it by its old name, Manga Studio. Ah yeah, I see that look in your eye, now you know what I'm talking about. I've never been a hardcore user of the program. There is so much in there. The times that I have dabbled in it, I've really liked it, but especially in the last 2 years or so, I haven't really used it that much. But in the time that I have spent with it, I could see why it has such an intensely passionate fan base. Since it's designed for comics, there are a lot of features in here that are specifically designed for drawing. For example, reference layers. You can color in your inks on a separate layer by setting that ink layer as a reference layer. You have brush smoothing that was far ahead of everybody else for a long time. There's some cool symmetry tools, editable gradients, multi-page comic layouts, brush organization. Photoshop just added this, has desperately needed it for years. Clip Studio has had it forever, and so much more. So I've had the opportunity this morning to just kind of run through it, test it out a little bit. I can't cover everything, but I wanted to give you kind of my first impressions and give a rundown of how the iOS app performs. Up top, the amazing thing to me is how faithful an adaptation this app is from the desktop. If you're not using an iPad Pro or Apple Pencil, I'm not sure you're going to be able to truly appreciate this fully. When you look at the iPad apps that are out there, you've got things like PROCREATE, Linea, Comic Draw, a whole bunch of others that are built on iOS specifically for iOS. There's a handful of other apps that feel like desktop apps that have been pulled over, and I think Clip Studio falls into that bucket. And if you've used Clip Studio on the desktop before, you're going to feel right at home in this new version because literally everything is there, at least everything that I could think to look for. But what if you've never used Clip Studio on the desktop? This is going to take some time to get used to, especially if you're used to those like iPad native apps. There's a lot of menus, a lot of tools, and a lot of palettes, and since you can right click or hold down in this case on any given menu to open up more options, if you're not familiar with that desktop app, you might not know what tools or palettes have options with them. It's not quite as discoverable on the iPad. Unless you're looking for something specific that you saw in a tutorial or whatnot, there's just going to be a lot of settings that are just tucked away. You're never natively going to find them. But like I said, if you know Clip Studio, you're going to be off to the races. Drawing on it feels fun, and with the Apple Pencil, it feels really, really good. I know a lot of people who AstroPad into their Macs just to use this program on their iPad, so being able to natively access it now is going to be really nice for those people. So what about file management? File management is, I guess, possible. So it doesn't use the native iOS file system by default. If you want to export your file to the desktop, you tap on the little logo icon drop down in the corner, and then you select something called File Management. If you tap on Share, then you can send your file to iCloud or Dropbox, and then you can use it on the desktop. You can open a file in kind of a similar way. I just used the File app that comes with the iPad now in iOS 11, and I right-clicked on it, downloaded it, and then I said copy to Clip Studio, and that seemed to open it up okay. Overall, this whole process just did not feel intuitive to me. I wish I could just go to the save menu and choose to either save it wherever it is on the iPad this is saving it, or save it to, one of the things that are located in iOS 11's File app. I really would love to see more native integration in future releases of this product. And as a side note, whatever you do not select Open Clip Studio. I had no idea what that meant because I already had it open, and I clicked on it. It took me to a screen called Clip Cloud, and I guess it's a cloud saving thing. Anyway, I had to force quit the app to get out of that screen. It didn't freeze up my iPad or anything. There just is no close button to get out of that screen. And ultimately, that was the one thing that frustrated me a little bit about this app when I was using it, was that it was such a faithful transition from the desktop to iOS that there were just a lot of things that were a little bit clunky. Overall, as long as I was drawing, I was loving it. And if I wasn't drawing, well, that's where I kind of bumped my toes here and there. So here's some of the things that I jotted down from my time with the app. One, I hear you can import brushes in a similar way that you can import files. I haven't tested this out because I don't have any brushes to test it out with, but it definitely sounds possible, and that is really cool. I really like the Apple Pencil and how it handles in this app. It just feels so good. Since most of the apps that I've used the Apple Pencil with are native iOS apps, it's hard to get a real feel for how it would work with a lot of desktop apps unless you use something like AstroPad or something like that. And using this in a full-fledged desktop app just it feels good. I did notice that occasionally a line would stutter a little bit when I was drawing just a straight line if I wasn't, applying quite enough pressure. You'll probably notice that here or there in the speed draw that I'm running under this. There are some finger shortcuts, so if you want to undo, you can just tap 2 fingers on the screen to undo or 3 to redo. That's one of my favorite things about the iPad is how easy it is to do that, so I'm glad to see they integrated that in. I noticed on all the drop-down menus, there are keyboard shortcuts. So I'm assuming the keyboard shortcuts work. I don't have a keyboard, so I wasn't able to test that out, but it looks like the keyboard shortcuts are also identical to what's on the desktop. So if you're using a keyboard and you're used to using the desktop app, you're going to be good to go. I saw some chatter on Twitter today from several people just kind of testing out the app. This one from Doug Hillis, he points out that the iPad often struggles when you get to really, really big file sizes. That's not a huge surprise to me, but that's something you should be aware of. So now let's talk that price. So I picked up Clip Studio itself on the desktop years ago. I think Smith Macro was running a sale in the US and it was like $20 or $25. It was a steal. That was the Pro version. There's also the EX version, which has a couple other settings in it. The Pro is fine for what I was doing. So I'm not really sure what to think about the monthly price on the iPad. I guess if this is your primary tool, that's not bad at all. I mean, you're going to pay for your tools, and if you really love it, then yeah, go all in. But if you're just dabbling around, that sort of price could get pretty expensive over time. I'm really curious to see if they stay with that pricing model since the desktop app can be so inexpensive. I will say this, the 6-month trial is really generous. I don't know of anybody who gives that big of a trial. That is plenty of time to know if this app is right for you or not. So those were my first impressions of Clip Studio on iOS. It's pretty cool, and like I said, since there's a 6-month trial, there's really no reason not to go and check it out, especially if you have an iPad Pro. And that's all I've got. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. Thanks for watching.